Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 9 of my Android Development for Beginners tutorial. Today I'm going to start creating a big application. This is going to be a pretty professional looking weather application by the time we're done with it. What we're going to focus on in this tutorial, however, is how to use JSON weather data and how to pull it into our application. Now, if you've never heard of JSON, it's not really that complicated. It's just used to transmit data using key-valued pairs. And by key, I mean, for example, we're going to have current temperature, and the value is going to be 37 degrees, or whatever it is. Okay, so the key just represents the name for what the data is. And what we're going to get into in this tutorial is how to pull that into our application. And then we're going to, in part 10, figure out how to organize that data. And then in part 11 and whatever, we're going to actually make a professional looking application. So let's go and jump in and look at exactly what we're going to have by the end of part 9. Okay, so in this tutorial, this is what we're going to make. We're going to pull all this raw data from weather.gov, and then we are going to cycle through it. Now, what's going on here is this JSON data, which is just key value pairs. So you have right here creation date, and then right under it you have a date and a time. Creation date local, and this is a credit, and then you're going to have all your interesting information like weather, a few clouds, weather image, wind chill, and all of this data. What our goal is going to be, and actually in the next part of the tutorial we're going to do it, is to cycle through all this data and pull out just the pieces that we want, which we are eventually going to use in our big professional looking weather application. Okay, so at the end of part 10, this is what we're going to have. We're going to be able to, in real time, get the current location, temperature, weather, all this information. We're going to be able to get ourselves an image. We're going to be able to pull in late afternoon. That's going to be dynamic. We're then going to be able to pull in information about the weather late afternoon, tonight, and Saturday. All this stuff is 100% dynamic. And then on top of that, we're going to be able to click on refresh and grab latitude and longitude. So refresh. Now you can see latitude and longitudes there. All of this information is all brand new, and it was all downloaded dynamically. Can I say dynamic more? So it's kind of neat. So that is our goal, is to pull all this in, and then that's all the heavy lifting work. That's all the real work. And then everything else is going to be placing these values in the right part of the screen to make it look professional. Okay, so now you know what we are going to have by the end of part 9 in this tutorial. And of course, all of the blocks and every single thing links to it is in the description. So it would probably be good to have it in front of you. This is going to make a lot more sense if you have it in front of you. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so you're probably wondering what exactly JSON data looks like, or you might know. Most of my people that watch my tutorials know exactly what it looks like. But either way, here it is. This is the exact data we're going to be using. And this is where it's coming from, forecast.weather.gov, mapclick, PHP, blah, 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 blah. I'll put a link to this. And then you're going to put in latitude, and then you're going to put in longitude, and of course we're going to dynamically generate all that. And then this part here is going to determine that this is going to be JSON data that we're getting, this part right here. And then everything gets a little bit funky inside of App Inventor whenever we pull all this data in. So let's specifically go and look at what that is going to look like. Okay, so this is just like an overview. You will completely understand this by the end of part 10, but I just wanted to give you sort of a rough overview of exactly how this data is going to be organized. Now, when this data is pulled into our application, this guy right here, operational mode, and this is just going to be lists of data. So this is going to be the main list of data. If we wanted the operational mode, which is actually nothing, that is actually going to be labeled as 8. So the 8th item in our list. Source name is going to be 10, and I'm drawing this with my mouse, so bear with me. Creation date is going to be number 1 in the list. Creation date local is going to be number 2, and of course we're not going to be paying attention to any of this. Production center, this is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is where I'm at. I might pull the location information and display that from there, or I might decide that I don't want to. And 3 is the credit, and then weather.gov, this guy right here, is 7th in the list. And then we get into location, which is going to be 6th in our list. and I doubt I'm going to get anything from there because I'm going to get my latitude and longitude inside of my actual device. Time is going to be 11, and this is going to be very important because I want to dynamically pull in this afternoon, tonight, and Friday so that that can be dynamic. I don't, have today, tonight, tomorrow. Well, what happens whenever it's tonight? Well, see the problems. So I'm actually dynamically going to pull in this afternoon, tonight, and Friday. And then if we cycle down through here, this is where we get to the data part of this data. And this is going to be very good information. And that's going to be 5. And it's going to have things like the highs and the low. Highs and low. That's what these guys are right here. We'll have weather. That'll also be great information to be able to get to. But this is actually weather and temperature and pop. These are actually going to be list items inside of the data list. So each one of these is going to be its own list. This is going to be number 5 list inside of our total list. And then inside of that, this is going to be item 1, 2, 3, and so forth and so on. So hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm going to get more and more and more into all of these. And by the end of this tutorial, you're going to know what all of these numbers are. I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to exactly what the JSON data is going to look like and where I'm getting it from. Okay, so now that I covered all that, what I'm going to need to do is in that list, the main list that has all of our data inside of it, there's actually going to be 11 items. And by the end of this tutorial, what I want to do is list inside of our application those 11 items, what their numbers are, just showed you the numbers a second ago, and then how all the data is organized inside of them so that I will be able to traverse all that data and pull out just what I wanted. So I'm going to keep this quite simple. I'm going to come in. That funky sort of thing happened here that sometimes happens inside of App Inventor where I don't have all my components all aligned right. So I'm just going to hit reload and hit continue. And this is called the weather app. See, it went and automatically got it. And now everything's in the right order. Good thing that little errors like that happen. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into layout. And I'm just going to get a whole bunch of horizontal arrangements. I'm drag that inside of there. Come over here to user interface, and I'm just going to be using labels. So I'm going to grab this label, throw that inside of there, go grab another label, and drag it and throw it inside of there. Okay, so they're going to be side by side. And I'm going to give these guys pretty normal names. So this first one, I am just going to call it. Well, I'm going to, inside of the text for it, I'm going to type in JSON1, and then I'm going to click on rename this button, and I'm going to give it the name of JSON label 1. And there we go. And then I'm going to come in and give this a name also. Over in the text area for that, I'm just going to call this data, and then come down here, click on rename, and then I'm going to call this JSON data label 1. So those are going to be next to each other, and now you can see data's in there in JSON1. Okay, so just to keep this nice and simple, I'm going to generate 11 of those. Remember, there's 11 items in the main JSON data list, so I want to figure out what data is in each one of those. Okay, so I went ahead and I created 11 of these, so now I'm just going to go in here and give them the same names. So just to keep this nice and simple, well, select that, come over here, JSON1, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to come in here and change all these names real quickly. So paste that inside of there, call that JSON2, I'm going to select that one, call this JSON3. So just so you understand, all I'm trying to do is figure out exactly how all of this data is stored, meaning data place 1, data place 2, data place 3. That's all I'm doing here. So paste that inside of there, and you'll be able to use this for numerous other different ways of parsing data, and that just means making sense of it pretty much. And 11. There we go. So you have all the right names for all those, and now I'm going to go in here and give them the right values as well. So this is going to be JSON label 1. Come in here, clicked on that, click on rename, and this is JSON label 1. So I'm going to call this JSON label 2. There we go. Copy that, and I'm just going to click through each one of these. Click on rename, paste, change that to 3, rename. This one's going to be 4, and I think you get the point. Just renaming all these, so it'll be easy to see them over in the block section. Okay, got all those renamed, and then I'm going to go through and do exactly the same thing with this. I'm going to give these all the value of data, right like that. And I always consider doing stuff like this sort of like it's a game. And in the end, if I play the game right and solve it, then I got myself a nice little customized app. Okay, so all those are now data. This is JSON data label 1. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. See, JSON data label 1. So go and change all those. Click on rename, JSON data label 2, JSON data label 3. And I'm going to do that for all these. And then the last one, JSON data label 11. Okay, so the hell will have good names and all the boring stuff's out of the way. I'm actually going to throw in 2 more labels. Just grab a label, drag it in there, drop it there. And this is going to be latitude and longitude. And I'm going to grab another button, throw it inside of there. And that is going to be for refresh. And I'm going to just call this latitude. What I'm really doing here is just working through, testing this longitude. Because if my names make sense, then everything else is going to be good. Rename this to latitude label, rename this to longitude label, and then the text here is going to be refresh, and then I'm going to call it refresh button. So rename refresh button. Okay, so the whole entire interface is set up. So now I'm going to go in the block section and start making things work. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to need to do is I am going to need to generate this URL which links to the JSON data. So go into App Inventor, and I'm going to create myself a whole bunch of variables inside of here that are going to store that information. So initialize global name, and I am going to give this guy the name of weather URL beginning, and that's going to be the beginning of this URL up until the latitude and longitude information. So all of that right there. I'm going to copy it, and then inside of here, quote, boom, and there we go. And I'm going to piece this together as I go on here. Then I'm going to have my latitude value inside of it, and I'm just going to give it a default. First off, the name for this is going to be latitude value because that's in the URL itself. And I'm just going to put a quote here, and I'm going to put 40.4406, which is like Pittsburgh, which is where I live. And then I'm going to need to get the next part of this URL, which is going to be the longitude part right here. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to select just that little tiny piece. And this is just so everything's all nice and neat inside of here. Create a new variable, pull this out of here, drop it right there. Weather URL. And I'm just going to call this longitude because that's pretty much what it is. Quote inside of there, drop that there, enter, and there you go. And then I'm going to have a latitude value. I can duplicate this as well to save time. So let's just say longitude value. There we go. And then let's set this to -79.9958. And then if we go back to our URL, this is going to be very important because this is going to be used to pull the information into our application. So I'm going to select that last part, come down inside of here, duplicate it, and then this guy is going to be called weather URL end URL. And then inside of here I can put the end of it. So that's going to allow me to dynamically sort of pull that information together and create the URL. Then what I'm going to need to do is whenever the application starts, I'm going to have to initialize a whole bunch of different things. So when screen 1 initialize, we've done this before. If any of this doesn't make sense, it's because you didn't watch part 1 of this tutorial series where I go over location sensors, initializing the screen, and things like that. So what am I going to do here? Well, the very first thing I want to do is I want to take the URL and use the web component to go and get data. Because I know that it doesn't matter if the location sensor works or doesn't work, it's still going to be able to go out and get this information. So before I do that, I'm going to create a custom function that's going to do that for me. So I'm going to go procedure, pull this out of here, drag it down here, drop it in. And if it's at all confusing, just stick with it here for a little bit. It'll all start to make sense. Then inside of this, well, I have to first go back into the designer because I forgot to pull over the web components. Alright, so what am I going to need here? I'm going to need some sensors. I'm going to need my location sensor. So drag that over there, drop that inside of there. I'm also going to need the ability to connect to the internet and pull in my JSON data. So the web component's going to do that for me. I'm also going to be communicating with the user with dialog boxes, or in this situation, App Inventor calls them notifiers. Drop that in there. And then finally, Activity Starter is also going to be used. And that is also going to be under connectivity, and that is going to be Activity Starter. Drop that in there. Alright, so there's all my non-visible components right there. Jump back over into blocks. And now we're going to be using our web component. So cycle whole way down inside of here, and here it is, right, this guy. And then I'm specifically going to set the URL that it's going to be pulling data from. There you can see right there, JSON text decode. We're going to use that later on. Zoom out of here a second, and then come down here where it says web URL, that guy. Drag that out of there. And I'm guessing you know what I'm going to put in there. I'm going to put the URL. This is where all the data is coming from. But to do so, I'm going to need to use a join, which means text, because that's multiple lines. So grab that. And then I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. So I'm going to click inside of here, and I'm going to create 5 strings so I can put my entire URL inside of there. Okay, great. Now what I'm going to do is just go in through all these different guys. So I'm going to go this right there, grab that. That's the beginning of the URL. This guy right here is going to be the initial latitude. This is going to be the initial, well, the little thing before the longitude. This one right here is going to be the actual longitude value. And this is going to be the end of the URL. Okay, so I said where I want to get the data from. Now I need to tell it to go get it. So that's also in the web component. Click on this, and I'm going to call get. And that's going to get all that data for me and bring it right into my application for me. I don't have to think about anything. Then, after it gets it, I need to do a couple other things, which is basically I need to check that I got the right data, and then I need to cycle through, and in this situation, I'm going to put it into all those different little boxes. So, after got text, that means I got what I was searching for, what I asked for, drop that inside of there, and I'm going to have to do a couple little checks inside of this. Response code is going to tell me if it got the data without errors. And what you need to do is check that the response code is 200. Just like you saying to somebody, hey, did you send me the right information I wanted? And they say yes. Well, in this situation, a yes is equal to the number 200. So what I need to do here is I need to do certain things if certain conditions are met, and other things if other conditions are met. That means I need to do a control and get an if then, drag that, drop it inside of there, and I need to check for equality, and one of the equalities is going to be a number. I'm checking the equality to see if the value of response code is equal to 200. So that means I need to go into math, grab this guy right here, if, drop that right there, the response code, get the response code, drop it inside of there, is equal to, I'm going to go into math, and I'm going to get myself a number. Whoops, didn't get it. Don't think I did. There it is. Grab it, drag it down here, drop it in there. And the specific number I'm looking for is 200. 200 means yes, everything is fine. And for now, I'm not going to worry about if it isn't equal to. If it is fine, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start decoding the data. However, like I said previously, all of that JSON data, all of that data is going to be a list of lists. So, just a list of lists. So that means I want to store that information. So I'm going to get and create another variable, drag that out of there, just drop it anywhere. And this is going to be called weather data. And yes, you can store lists of lists inside of here. However, if you're going to create a list, you need to actually create it. Create empty list, grab this, drag it, drop it inside of there, and then we're going to come back down to this guy. So just so you see it, it's weather data, and it's going to end up being lists of lists, okay? And like I said, all these blocks are available in a link in the description. All right, so now what I need to do is come in here and actually start getting all of the data and putting it back in the right boxes. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm in a designer again. I'm going to see what is list item number 1 in the JSON data and put that data here. What is list item number 2 and put that data here. And do that over and over again. So back into blocks. Now the very first thing I need to do here, well, let's go and get this. And I'm going to go into weather data, and I'm going to say set global weather data. Grab this guy, drag him down here, and then come back down here again. All right. So if we got a response code of 200, that means we got our data and everything looks fine. Then what I need to do is decode it. So to decode it, I'm going to need the web component again. And I'm going to go specifically, this is JSON data, so I'm going JSON text decode. This right here. Drag it, drop it right there. Then inside of that, response content. That's a fancy word for saying all the data you requested. So I'm taking all the data I requested, and I want it put into the list of lists, which is called weather data. Then what I need to do is start setting all of these guys. So, meaning in the designer view, so I'm going to go set, right here, JSON data label 1, this guy. I need to set the text for it. So drag it, drop it right there. And specifically, I want to grab the weather data and figure out what index number 1 is inside of that. So remember, weather data is just a list. So we're going to come into lists, and I'm going to say select list item. You could use length of list and put the weather data inside of there. You do that for homework just to see that there are indeed 11 items inside of there. But select list item list and the specific index that I want. Remember, there's 11 items. Drag that right there. And then inside of here, I'm going to go and get global weather data is what I'm looking for. So we come up here, grab this again, get global weather data, drag it down there. And this is the list that I want to work from. Drop it right there. And then I specifically want index number 1. So math, number, grab it, drop it in there, 1. So there is list item number 1. Then if I want to do this for all the other ones, remember there's 11 of them, I can just do a duplicate, drag that right there, change this to label, JSON data label 2, there that is. And then in this situation, I want the second item in the list. And then if I want to do it again and duplicate it, remember I have 11 of them, come in here, do this, and am I going to be able to get to it? Yes. JSON data label 3, there it is, and we can do that for all of them, and that's also your homework. Remember, I have the completed blocks in a link in the description underneath the video. So there it is. Do that for all 11 of them, and you're going to see exactly what I said you'll see previously at the beginning of the tutorial. Alright, so let's get all this information, drag it out of here, and then whenever we initialize the application, we need to call, well, this guy right here, which I forgot to give it a name. Its name is going to be called get weather data. And there that is. And if I want to call procedure, just go over to procedures, call get weather data, and it's going to call for all that stuff that we just defined there to execute. And then I need to basically set up the location sensor so that I can get dynamic information. I covered this previously, but I'm going to blow through, literally in part 1 and 2, I covered location sensors, but I'm going to blow through this really quickly just to give you a review. So if I want to use the location sensor, just come over here, click on location sensor, and I'm going to look specifically. Well, first off, what I do is I need to verify that the location sensor is enabled and turn it on. Well, to always get this to work, you need to do something a little bit crazy. You need to, before you use a location sensor, you need to first shut it off. I know that sounds silly, but I talked about this before. And logic, remember that. Oh, there's true. It doesn't matter. Change that to false. First, we're going to shut it off, and then we are going to change it back to true. So duplicate that, drop that right there, and turn it on to true. So the location sensor works a little bit weird, but either way, that always works. Then what we need to do is verify that GPS is a potential provider of data for our location sensor. So if we need to do an if then else, well, click on control, if then else, drop that right there. Then we need to get the available providers for latitude and longitude information. We're going to go into the location sensor again. There it is. And we're going to look specifically for available providers. And we're going to also, this is all text, so we're going to have to go into text and look specifically for the list of available providers. Is one of them GPS? So we're going to say contains text, this guy right here, drop that inside of there, and then take the available providers list and then put in the very specific part we want, which is GPS. There that is. Whoops, green one a little crazy. There we go, got it back. So we're looking for GPS in the available providers, put that in place. Then, if GPS is an available provider, we are going to lock our provider name for our latitude and longitude information, location data, and specifically provider name, set provider name, drop that inside of there, and that's going to be GPS. Duplicate, drop it in there. And then for the location sensor, once we set that we want to use GPS, we need to lock it. And we need to go to provider locked, set, drop that right there. Grab this nice true up here, duplicate it, lock it. There we go. Then we can set our latitude and longitude information that we had in the designer view. If we want to jump over there real quickly, this right here, latitude and longitude right there. Jump back over into blocks, and here we are. In here, select through all this stuff. There's latitude label. There we go. Set latitude label text. There it is. Grab it, drop it right there. Would actually probably be a good idea also to set the latitude value up here. So get this and change this to set. Drop that right there. There we go. 2. And the latitude value is going to be whatever the value of latitude is from the location sensor. Click on that, and there's latitude. Grab that, drop that right there, And we could also go and duplicate this if we want. Duplicate, drag that, drop that right there. And then, what the heck, let's just go and duplicate all that. Duplicate, drop that right there. Duplicate, drop that right there. And we're going to do the same thing for longitude. So, longitude value, boink, and change this to longitude. Can't do it. Need to get myself some more screen real estate. Longitude, there's longitude. Change this to longitude as well. There's longitude. And then don't forget to change this to longitude. Did it. There it is. Alright, and then all we need to do, and what we're doing this for is so we can dynamically pull the weather information based off of the current latitude and longitude position. What we need to do is, if it couldn't get the latitude and longitude information, it's going to give latitude or longitude a value of 0. So we want to check, this is the final piece, by the way. We want to check that that's true. Let's go into control. So we're going to go in here, drop it right here. And this is just to protect from errors. And we're going to say, hey, we want to get the, let's just say latitude value, get, and we're going to check that it's not equal to, go into the math, get this guy right here, drag it down here. If the current latitude value is not equal to 0, grab it, drop it right here. Then we want to call to get the weather data. Otherwise, don't. And what you should do is put a notifier in there if something's wrong. And then the final little piece we could do here, which we did before, if the location sensor is not working, what we're going to do is force them to go into their settings and turn on their GPS. And to do that, we need to click up here and go else, drop that right there. It's going to open up the else right down here. There it is. And let's open up a notifier. There's notifier, dialog box, fancy name, and then we're going to put in the same information we did previously, which is going to be please enable GPS, and then for the title, I'm going to put can't access GPS. There we go. Okay, there we go. And that's just going to be the text that's on the button. Cancel is going to be on the other button for our dialog box. And then if they click that they will enable their GPS, what we're going to do then is send them to the right part of their settings on their device and allow them to change it. And you do that by clicking on notifier after choosing. This is what's going to be called after they make the choice. Hopefully clicking on OK, otherwise the app isn't going to work. And then again, this is going to be a conditional if, so that's in control. If then, drag that, drop that down there. Get myself some more screen real estate. There we go. Nope, actually I have to come up here again. Click on logic, grab this. We have to verify that they chose OK for their option inside of this. So get choice, verify that get choice was OK, which is that button. Drop it right there. And if it was, then we want to open up our settings so that they'll be able to go in there and change and turn on their GPS. To do that, they're going to have to start an activity. Click on procedure, get this guy, drag it down here, drop it right there. Open location settings. That's going to allow them to go in there and change those settings. We're going to need to call the activity starter to start this outside activity. To do so, we're going to have to first set the action that we want performed, which is to open the specific part of the application that's going to allow them to change location settings. I'm getting that from here. This isn't something you memorize, this is something you just copy and paste. So I'm specifically on here, I'm going to search for location, and here it is. This is the one I'm looking for. Like I said, you don't need to memorize this. And whenever you do, it's going to actually give you the special code you're going to have to put in if you want to open up the ability to change the GPS to on, which is that guy right there. Jump back over into App Inventor. I'm doing a lot of this work for you so you don't have to, which is a good thing. And then of course, after you set the activity you want to start, you need to start it. So that's right here, call, start that activity, and then hopefully they turn on their GPS settings. And then the very, very final thing is to call for open location settings to actually open. And we're going to go into procedures and call and drop it in open location settings. So that was an absolutely crazy tutorial. Actually, I didn't do one thing, which is making the refresh button work, because I think that would be great homework. I want you to go in there and figure out how to make the reset button work so that you can dynamically choose latitude and longitude based off of your current position. And of course, the answer to that homework is available in the link in the description for this video. Okay, so to finish this off, this is what the app looks like after it runs. I showed you this previously. And for the next part of the tutorial, what we need to do is focus in on grabbing just the data we need. So what was important about doing this is we found out that we could get the creation date at part 1 inside of this data. Creation date local, credit, current observation in 4, which we're going to be using a lot of that information in the next part of the tutorial. So for homework, if you want to go ahead and try and weed your way through this, remember it's just lists of lists, then feel free to do that. It'll be a great learning experience. Otherwise, tune in next time and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.